For the first time, has been allowed inside the operation at the heart of Japan's fight against the new coronavirus. The public may seem unworried about the situation, but in here, the mood is one of increasing concern.
本当にどこまで持ちこたえられるか、いつ何が起きてもおかしくない状態です。
What can be done to stop this mysterious virus? Researchers are working to contain the spread and are learning new facts about infection mechanisms. Latest research reveals how tiny droplets carrying the virus can remain in the air for some time. Meanwhile, existing drugs used to treat other illnesses have shown signs of effectiveness in some cases. We bring you reports from the front lines of the fight against a pandemic.
The coronavirus is spreading around the world. Some viewers may feel the situation in Japan is calm compared to what's happening elsewhere. But even here, things are far from stable.
There have been 1,091 confirmed cases in Japan, with a death toll of 41. A government panel of experts said on March 19th the number of cases with unknown sources of infection is growing. They warned that if this continues, Japan will soon experience a large-scale outbreak, leading to an explosive spread of the virus known as an overshoot.
These experts are now focusing on cases in which the route of infection has not been identified.
This man in his 70s was infected with the new coronavirus. He was the 11th case in Hokkaido. The prefecture declared a state of emergency regarding the virus in February. Many patients have been hesitant to talk about what they went through, but he says he wants everyone to know what his experience was like.
熱もあり、そして咳込みがもうひどくてですね、空咳と言いますか、最後はキンキンするような咳になったんですけれども、自分はどうなのかな、ダメかなとかっていうのはよぎりましたですね。
These are records he kept on his schedule and how he was feeling. He traced his movements for the 2 weeks before he started feeling unwell. He says he has no idea how and where he was infected. He first started feeling well on February 16th. He had a headache, felt listless, and had a cough, the symptoms of a cold. Over-the-counter cold medicine did little to improve his condition. So, he went to a hospital in Asahikawa City. This CAT scan was taken during the visit. It shows a shadow in his right lung. This is characteristic of pneumonia caused by the new coronavirus. Two days later, he was admitted into the special infectious disease ward at another hospital. And the following day, his wife was confirmed to be infected as well. The man was given fever and cough medicine, but his fever didn't go down, and his cough worsened.
1時間おきぐらいにもう咳で目を覚めてですね、もう喉がカラカラになって、ほとんど寝てない状況で本当にきつかったですね。
On the 7th day of his stay in the hospital, the doctor decided to give him an antiviral drug used to treat AIDS.
実はこの コロナウイルスに関しての治療薬が今ありませんと。しかしいろんなところの知見を聞いていくと聞いたりしているものも何点かありますと。もう何でもいいからやってもらいたいというと。
The man's symptoms improved. His body temperature returned to normal, and his cough subsided. "17 days after he was admitted to the hospital, both he and his wife tested negative. He has been discharged. But he says he's worried he may have infected others before being hospitalized.
いつかかったのかっていうのが、分からないわけですから、実際にはね。それで発症するまでの間に期間が長い、症状が出るまでの間の人様に移していくようなことが分からないままで、また他の方に移してしまう、もしかしたら私から移ってっていうのが本当に怖かったですね。
How can we stop an infection that spreads before it's even detected? NHK was allowed to cover the special unit leading the government's COVID-19 countermeasures. The team was set up at the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare late February to respond to cluster infections. It's made up of more than 30 experts from universities and research institutes around the country. They analyze daily infection data in order to prevent the virus from spreading. Professor Hitoshi Ohtani of the Graduate School of Tohoku University is spearheading the operation. He's an infectious disease control specialist who worked for the WHO during the 2003 SARS outbreak. Day in and day out, he's conducting domestic analysis and exchanging information with researchers around the world.
日本は今のところとどまっている感染者どんどん増えてますけれども、爆発的な感染拡大にはならないところにとどまっているので、本当に、どこまで持ちこたえられるか、いやもういつ何が起きてもおかしくない状態です。
The task force is trying to nip the spread of infection in the bud. It's gathering information on group infections known as clusters. The team has confirmed 13 clusters of 5 or more infections across 8 prefectures. But starting in March, an increasing number of cases have emerged where a source of infection related to a cluster has not been identified. This raises the possibility of a cluster that hasn't been found yet. If unidentified clusters continue to spread, this will lead to an overshoot, at which point the situation in Japan will spiral out of control.
ポツンと出るやつがあちこちに出るっていうことは、その裏にあるものを僕らは見てないということになるので、そういう意味で非常に危ない状況、高圧力がたくさん出てくるともう危険な状況だということで、これ多分ウイルスの生存戦略としては一番正しい生存戦略なんですよね。見えないようにして、あまり、重症化しないようにして、でそうすると見つからないので、そういうウイルスなので、もう SARS とは全く別物のよくできたウイルスです。
March 13th. The atmosphere in the room is tense.
は先生、なんか今朝データをご覧になられたんで、
それだからデータを見なきゃ分かんないので、ちょっと今この段階では言えないです。何もないです。はい。
Reports are coming in of 2 infections in urban areas of western Japan without clear connections to clusters. The team has been on high alert for cases in densely populated areas with unknown sources of infection. These are the types of cases that can lead to an overshoot.
分かんないのはこの接触が分からない。
2人気持ち悪いですね。
この辺はみんな全くどこだか分からないですね。
And now, reports of cases without links to clusters are also coming in from Tokyo.
東京をつなげないといけない。
東京、昨日でも我々が思ってたよりもつながってました。つながってるっていうか。
だけどまだつながってない。
30ぐらいと思ってたら20。まあ3です
20は
けど。
でかい。20が本当につながってなかったらもう終わりですよ。リンクがわからない、感染源がわからないのがいっぱい増えてきてるからです。
The infection routes of some of the cases in Tokyo were later identified.
だから関東と関西がやられてるとして、なるほど。
The situation remains precarious as the number of cases increases across the country.
どういう状況なのかまだまだよく見えてないところがあるので、
まあちゃんとやらないとかなり厳しい。
At a government-led meeting on March 19th, experts conveyed a strong sense of crisis.
ある日突然、爆発的に患者が急増するオーバーシュートが起こり得る。
Professor Hiroshi Nishiura of the Graduate School of Hokkaido University is in charge of data analysis for the counter-cluster team. He says his models show that rapid spread cannot be stopped unless person-to-person contact is drastically reduced.
この感染症に関しては無駄な接触を回避すると。だから人と人とが会って接触をしてしまうということを避ける努力をすることができると防げるということも中国から学ばせてもらってきたものですし、日本でもそれに相応する実績が出つつあります。すべての接触を 100% とするとそれが80%、90% ぐらいに減ったところで微々たる効果しかありません。もっと一気に劇的にそれが半分以下に減るようなそんな行動変容というものが起こらないと流行対策っていうのは成功しないと思いますので、みんなどうやってこの流行に対応するのかっていうのはただ単に政策論者であったり専門家が決めることじゃなくてみんなと向き合いたいなと思っています。
Experts are worried that the severity of the situation has not been effectively conveyed to the public.
今はなんか日本は落ち着いてるみたいにみんな追ってるので、ね、そこら辺と僕らが思っている気持ちとのギャップはすごくあるので、だからそこら辺がこのウイルスのすごい難しいところですよね。
We're now joined by Hitoshi Yoshitani, professor at the Graduate School of Tohoku University and a member of the government expert panel. Thank you for coming.
In the video, you have a real sense of urgency about the virus, but people in Japan seem to think everything is calming down. What should we think about the situation in this country?
Well, I think Japan is barely hanging on right now. The Public Health Center, the National Institute of Infectious Diseases, local governments, local research institutes, and the young researchers in the counter-cluster team. We're working around the clock to find clusters and minimize infection. That's how we've been able to avoid a large-scale epidemic so far.
But there have been a number of cases, particularly in urban areas, where infection routes haven't been identified. What do we need to know on this front?
We believe that if we can accurately monitor clusters, there will not be a large-scale outbreak. But there are cases we haven't been able to track. In Osaka, the government was able to identify clusters stemming from music clubs. But when there are lots of cases that aren't tied to a cluster, we can assume there's one lurking that we can't see. This is a very dangerous situation because we have no idea of the scale of infection we're facing.
This graph shows new infections in Japan. What do you think will happen moving forward?
Well, the first wave of the virus came from Wuhan in China. That hasn't led to a major outbreak here, like it has in other countries. We were able to hang on and make it through that stage barely. But the first wave still isn't fully controlled in urban areas. And while that's still going on, the second wave has already started. That's what we're facing in Japan.
And what is the second wave?
Right now, COVID-19 is a pandemic. And unfortunately, large outbreaks have occurred throughout the world, particularly in the Middle East, Europe, and major cities in the United States. In the first wave, most of the infected people came from Wuhan and other parts of Hubei province. But in the second wave, a far greater number of people from around the world could flow into Japan. So that means Japanese citizens living overseas who return home. And on top of that, it's likely chain infections caused by travelers returning from Europe and elsewhere have already started in Japan. It simply won't be possible to overcome this second wave by continuing our current measures.
So the second wave has already started?
Yes, that's the case.
The government expert meeting mentioned overshoot. Can you tell us what that means?
It's basically what happens when the number of infections exceeds a certain level. Then there's an explosive increase in cases, an overshoot. If we lose track of chains of clusters, this could trigger a major cluster. This is called a mega cluster. Once this happens, the healthcare system will collapse, and there will be large-scale infections at medical facilities. I think this is what led to the overshoots we're seeing around the world, these massive explosions of infections.
If there's an overshoot, will the counter-cluster unit be able to control the situation?
No. If there's an overshoot, we would have to do the city shutdowns that we're now seeing around the world. The infections wouldn't end unless everyone stopped going out and traffic was completely cut off. That's the situation we'd be facing.
When there's an overshoot, the burden on the medical system makes it hard to treat people who could be saved under normal conditions. People die who don't have to. So let's say there is an overshoot. How long would our medical system be able to handle the cases?
Unfortunately, the Japanese medical system wouldn't be able to cope at all. The intensive care capacity in Japan is very low. This is the same in most countries around the world. If we exceed this capacity, we would lose lives that we could otherwise save. So we have to control this epidemic to be within our medical capacities. That's what we need to focus on.
What kind of measures can be put in place to prevent an overshoot?
We have to monitor infected people, chains of infection, clusters, and cluster chains. If we do that, there will be no large-scale outbreaks. Take the Diamond Princess cruise ship. More than 700 people were infected, but they were all monitored, and there's been no related outbreak outside the ship. And outbreaks from medical institutes are highly unlikely. That's because infections there are kept under tight surveillance. Also, we need to monitor cluster chains like we did in Osaka. If we follow the links, we can prevent a major outbreak. That's what Japan's strategy is, to thoroughly monitor the clusters and prevent an overshoot.
In order to stop the spread of the virus, we need to understand the mechanisms of infection and then change our behavior accordingly. So far, we have considered two main routes of transmission. One is infection by coming into contact with something that has the virus on it. The other is infection through droplets emitted in sneezes and coughs. But some experts say there is possibly a third infection route.
Experts are now looking at this new infection mechanism as the key to preventing the further spread of the virus.
ただの会話の中で感染が広がっているとか、ある程度の距離があってもそれが広がっているような、そういった事例を見ると通常の飛沫感染だけでは説明できない、非常に小さな粒子ということでマイクロメーターの粒子、マイクロ飛沫感染とも呼べるような、そういった状況が起きたんじゃないかなというふうに考えられます。
So how does this take place? NHK is conducting an experiment with a group of researchers. The team will track particles in the air using laser beams and a high-sensitivity camera. This technology allows us to detect droplets as small as 0.1 micrometers wide. The experiment starts. First, sneezing. We can see a large droplet about 1 millimeter in diameter. It quickly falls. But let's look through the high-sensitivity camera. We can see small particles that seem to glitter floating through the air. These particles are all smaller than 10 micrometers, or 1/100th of a millimeter in diameter. Let's take a look from a different angle. They're small and light. You can see them drifting through the air. These are microdroplets. We're learning that sneezing isn't the only source of these droplets. We ran the same experiment on a close-range conversation. People generate a lot of microdroplets when they talk loudly. The droplets between these two stay where they are. They don't drift away. It's not yet known what volume of microdroplets leads to infection. But Tateda says we can't rule out the possibility that microdroplets have spread the virus to some extent.
そのマイクロ飛沫、小さな粒子の中にもたくさんのですね、生きたウイルスがいて、 大きな声での会話、あるいは激しい息遣い、そういった中でですね、このマイクロ飛沫ができて、それが近くの人、その人が吸い込むことによって感染が広がる、そういったリスクが見えてきたものと思います。
The risk of infection through microdroplets becomes even greater in a closed space with poor ventilation. This lab is simulating the movement of microdroplets in an airtight room. About 10 people in an enclosed space the size of a classroom. A person coughs once and spreads about 100,000 droplets. Large droplets are shown in blue and green. Most of these fall to the ground within 1 minute. But the microdroplets, shown in red, continue to drift. This simulation uses only microdroplets. 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, the microdroplets are still floating in place.
空気がよどんでいると、つまり空気の流れがないということで、マイクロ飛沫そのものは、落ちたり、違う場所に動くことはできませんので、長時間その場所にとどまるっていうことになります。
But there is a way to prevent this stagnation of microdroplets. Opening windows and increasing air circulation is believed to be effective. When you open a window, microdroplets are quickly swept away. They're very small and light, so any airflow will get rid of them.
できればですね、2箇所開けて風の流れを作ってあげるということが大事。それが1時間に1回でもいいか、そういうようなことをやることによって感染のリスクというのはかなり下げることができるようになるんじゃないかなというふうに思います。
We're now joined by Mitsuo Kaku, a professor at Tohoku Medical and Pharmaceutical University. He specializes in the prevention and treatment of infectious diseases. We just learned how microdroplets move, but we don't know if this brings a high risk of infection for the new coronavirus. Professor Oshitani, you've been watching the actual spread of the virus. Do you think microdroplets are spreading infection?
I don't think airborne infection has occurred. If it had, there would already have been a large-scale outbreak here in Japan. We believe most infections have been through large droplets or through contacts. But it is possible that microdroplets can cause short-distance transmission in exceptional cases, and this can lead to a cluster. People who have mild symptoms still carry the virus. They might not sneeze or cough or even have a fever, but they still release the virus when they talk loudly or breathe heavily. And by doing so, they release large amounts of the virus, and it's highly likely that this is creating clusters.
Professor Kaku, what do you think we should be most careful about when considering microdroplet infection?
You have to avoid the 3 situations Professor Oshitani pointed out earlier.
And what are those?
Closed spaces, areas where many people gather, and close-range conversations. You have to avoid all 3. And it's necessary to ventilate, particularly in medical facilities, where there could be a lot of microdroplets. One place that's a really big concern is the waiting room. Here, lots of people are concentrated for long periods of time. People talk while they wait, and this leads to microdroplets in the air. And if ventilation is poor, that could mean infection. So the air needs to be constantly flowing, and we need to make sure people don't come all at the same time.
Professor Oshitani, those three situations you listed, do you think they're a big part of the current spread of the virus?
We saw from the beginning that the risk of infection was very high in these three situations. They have to be avoided as much as possible. This is very important in our fight against COVID-19. We've been emphasizing this from the start. But even now, these situations haven't been reduced. You see them all the time, even in large venues with lots of people. Japan has been really lucky so far in that we haven't had any large-scale clusters. But you can't just expect that to continue. If we don't do anything, then there will be a large-scale cluster soon. And when that happens, our medical system will not be able to handle it. People need to remember this before they plan events or activities and think about how their behavior can prevent a large-scale outbreak here in Japan.
This is all important information, but many people are worried about how long the situation will last.
How long will the battle against COVID-19 continue? Viruses are generally said to spread when conditions are cold and dry. But some experts say this new strain is different.
I think we have to assume that coronavirus can spread efficiently in tropical areas. We have to move forward and respond to this outbreak with the presumption that transmission in any area can be effective regardless of their climate.
The virus is already spreading in countries in the tropical regions of Africa and South America. Some experts believe that it will take even more time to bring the global situation under control, since the virus has already made it to the southern hemisphere.
The virus will continue to spread in Africa and in South America, and then this is going into winter time for them soon. Then the virus will spread very severely in those countries. And this will probably last for 2 to 3 years until the general herd immunity is over 70 to 80% in the global population before this epidemic will start to subside.
The battle against COVID-19 looks like it will last a long time. The number of patients has already exceeded that of SARS. Professor Oshitani, how do we win this fight?
Well, Japan learned a lot during the first wave of the epidemic. We had to handle some very difficult incidents very early on, like the Diamond Princess cruise ship. Also, there have been a number of outbreaks in urban areas, and we've been learning from these experiences as well. The second wave will be very difficult. But if we rely on our experience and implement thorough measures, we do have a chance during the second wave under control at a relatively early stage. I think this is possible for Japan.
This chart shows 3 ways to fight infection. Which do you think is the most effective method?
Well, a vaccine takes time, and we have no idea if we can actually make one. Second, herd immunity. That only happens when lots of people are infected, let's say 70% of the population. Many people will die before this happens. And then there's controlling the virus by taking measures to change our behavior. That's what we're doing now. We're trying to place only minimum restrictions on social activities, unlike China. while also slowing down the infection as much as possible. By continuing to do what we've been doing, we do have a chance to control this virus to some extent. I think we're at a stage where there is some hope. But the second wave will be even more severe. I've said this many times, but we need to take thorough measures to prepare.
How can we hang on until a vaccine is available? Researchers around the world are working non-stop to find an effective way to treat COVID-19 using existing drugs.
Efforts are underway to find which drugs can treat this new virus. Shutoku Matsuyama of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases was the first person in Japan to start researching COVID-19 treatment.
初めて遭遇する事態なので、なんていうかな、考えながら進んでいるという形だと思っています。
Matsuyama and his colleagues examined about 1,200 kinds of medicines used to treat various diseases. They administered each one to cells infected by a type of coronavirus and tracked how it suppressed the virus's proliferation. The team found several promising candidates. One drug called Alvesco caught their attention. Alvesco has been used to treat asthma for many years and is known to only cause a few side effects. Clinical use has already begun on coronavirus patients at a regional hospital in Kanagawa Prefecture. The hospital received a number of patients from the Diamond Princess in February.
来られた患者さんがみんな肺炎を起こしてどんどん悪くなっていくというところで、いやこれはもうとんでもない感染症を見てるんじゃないかと、もうとにかく必死に診療をしていた。
This is a report on the progress of treatment so far. In the case of a man in his 70s, his pneumonia worsened after he was hospitalized. Eventually, his condition got to the point where he needed to be put on oxygen. This is a CAT scan of his lungs. The white shadows are inflammation. After the doctors administered Alvesco, the symptoms subsided and the white shadows disappeared. The 3 patients treated with the drug have seen their conditions improve.
それまでが本当に辛い戦いだったので、救われたと思いましたね。本当にこの薬だけのせいなのかはもちろんわからないんだけれども、驚きましたね。
ちょっと薄くなってきてますよね、ここのところ。
What can we expect from the development of therapeutic drugs? Tsuneo Morishima leads domestic research efforts.
今の時点ではですね、少なくとも4種類のお薬が臨床試験に入っていると思います。でそしてそれぞれの結果が大体3月の末から4月の初めぐらいの段階で揃ってくるんじゃないかなというふうに考えています。その結果を見てそれを解析することによって患者さんのどの病状の時にはどの薬がいいだろう、進んだ時にはどういう薬がいいだろう、あるいはこう併用したらどうかというような結果が出てくると思います。それを考えていくことによって軽い肺炎から どんどん進行して集中治療が必要になってくる重い肺炎、そういうふうに移行するのを防ぐことができるというふうに考えています。
These are the drugs currently being administered to patients infected with COVID-19. They're typically used to treat other diseases. Avigan, Alvesco, Kaletra, and Remdesivir. Avigan is a flu drug developed by a Japanese pharmaceutical company. Clinical studies have already started at the Fujita Health University Hospital in Aichi Prefecture, where the drug is being administered to patients. Regarding Avigan, the Chinese government has announced it will officially adopt the drug in its medical guidelines, saying it has been proven to be effective in clinical research. However, there are some things to keep in mind about these drugs. Alvesco and these other drugs are being administered to COVID-19 patients at designated medical facilities. You won't be able to get a prescription by just going to a clinic or a pharmacy.
Professor Kaku, what do you think about the effectiveness of these drugs?
I have high hopes. They aren't just going to help us hang on until a vaccine is ready. If data shows these are effective treatments, these drugs will play a key role in beating the coronavirus. This could be a game changer in turning around the battle against this virus. We saw the doctor in the video who was struggling to treat his patients. He wasn't sure if these effects were solely due to the drug, but he went for it, and it worked. This is very good news. If we can run some more clinical studies or trials on patients, that could help us prove the effectiveness of these drugs in scientific terms. That will really help us in the fight against the new coronavirus.
So if the benefits of these drugs can be confirmed, they might be a trump card in some senses.
In the sense that by knowing the effectiveness of the drugs, we can offer a better prognosis, then yes, it is a trump card. We can treat people and improve their conditions, and we can increase the possibility of saving more lives.
And it follows that if we can reduce the number of patients who get seriously ill or die, we can change how much the virus spreads?
That's right.
So when will most people actually be able to use these drugs?
It'll be a while, but I'm hopeful we'll get the data eventually. The National Center for Global Health and Medicine is taking the lead on these clinical trials. And, according to a report by the center's Dr. Omagari, the data will be available within about 6 months.
The Chinese government recently made an announcement about a clinical study of Avigan. What about that?
That also caught my attention. Viruses carry an enzyme called RNA polymerase, which is what replicates the virus and allows it to spread. Avigan blocks it. So actually, it could be an effective drug against all sorts of viruses. It's been shown to be effective against infectious diseases that cause severe symptoms. So I have high expectations for it.
While scientists work to find treatment, the impact of the new coronavirus on society is increasing every day. This fight against this virus will continue for some time. So how should we deal with it as a society and prevent the spread of anxiety? Taiwan has drawn plaudits for its response. It has managed to limit the number of cases to 169 and the number of deaths to just 2.
Children arrive at school. Life continues as normal in Taiwan, where authorities have successfully implemented strict preventive measures. Thermographic cameras are set up at school gates. If a child shows a temperature higher than 37.5 degrees Celsius, they are sent home. They're checked again before class starts.
36.0，发现孩子的额温超过37.5度之后，我们就会送到健康中心。
The school contacts parents of children with high fevers. They have to report their recent movements to the authorities.
小朋友这2个礼拜内是否有出国的状况？没有，好。
主要是要洗这个地方哦。好，那这边要怎么洗呢？好，来，在这个地方把它搓一搓。
How was Taiwan able to implement such measures so quickly? The government delayed the start of the semester by 2 weeks in February to head off mass infection. This allowed schools to put in place preventive measures for when they reopened. These included clear standards to guide closures. If one student or teacher was infected, the individual class was shut down. 2 infections, and it was the entire school. An online learning system was also put in place. The government ordered the development of a virtual classroom. It's now ready for immediate use.
目前我觉得我们台湾在防疫措施上做得相当成功啊，因为各个政府的部门呢对学校都非常关心，只要学校提出的需求，政府部门呢就立即协助。
Chen Shih-chung is in charge of all coronavirus measures in Taiwan. He has the same authority as a prime minister. He granted NHK his first exclusive interview since the start of the outbreak.
好，那在心理上面哈，我们必须要全民大家能够团结一起。那要让大家能够团结一起，必须要让全民知道，哈，这各种的情况。好，那这样会让人民有一个信心，就是说我们是通盘考虑过的，那该怎么做或下面的细节。
今天没有确诊的案例。
He holds a press conference every day to give updates on the virus. He covers a wide range of topics, from new infections to warnings to citizens. In response to panic buying,
其实台湾的那种相对的民生物资是绝对不会缺的啦。 好，那大家想想看，我们的日子都在过，这物资本来就在，所以过度的来这样的存这样的物资或过度的抢购是没有必要的。
He spends nearly 2 hours answering every question in order to put citizens at ease. Taiwan is also taking measures to fight against the shortage of everyday goods. The government manages all face mask stocks and sells them at pharmacies and convenience stores. Adults are allowed to buy up to 3 a week for themselves and 5 for children. You have to present your health insurance card to buy any, and the system records purchase history to prevent hoarding.
暂停的，那不能领，因为你那个上次才领过。他卡就知道说他还没有满7天，还没有满7天就不能领。
The government also developed an app to help people who are too busy to go to the pharmacy themselves. You can use it to make a reservation and pick up your order whenever you want at a 24-hour convenience store.
好，你要找一个简单的事情，做出一个有效率的决策，让大家看到你这个效率的结果。那经由小政策来建立人民对你的信心。那接下来你的大的政策，大家才有办法跟你配合。在对抗病毒的时候，其实病毒来袭一个是来侵犯我们的心理了，一个是侵犯我们的生理。说我们每一天 定时的跟国人报告全部的情况，让整个疫情透明化，让民众跟政府能够站在一起，让我们共同防疫才会成功。
Professor Kaku, what can we learn from Taiwan?
It's a great model. It is a very detailed response. They made thorough preparations and were 1 or 2 steps ahead of the outbreak, putting their measures into practice. I think it's very important to explain whatever the plan is to the public and build a system of communication. That's crucial to take on infectious diseases.
They were also thorough with information disclosure.
Yes, that's very important. You have to do that properly.
Professor Kaku, how should we fight this virus?
As Professor Oshitani said earlier, we need to do what we can as individuals. And we also need to work together as a society. I think the Taiwan model is clearly effective. The way to overcome the virus is for individuals to protect themselves, and for individuals and society to work together to deal with the problem. We have to do this together.
Professor Oshitani, as a specialist in the containment of infectious diseases, what do you think our approach should be?
I think this virus is very difficult to come up with effective countermeasures against, but Japan has managed so far. There were some people who thought Japan would be the first country to suffer from the epidemic because of the Diamond Princess and our low testing levels. But we've managed to keep the number of infections low so far. I think now the world is looking at what we did as far as countermeasures. You're seeing the United States and countries in Europe experience overshoots. But despite our worries, none so far in Asia or Africa. Japan's experience could help many countries around the world fight the coronavirus. I think by bringing together the knowledge of the world, and everybody starts taking this problem more seriously, having everyone in the country start thinking about countermeasures, then we can overcome this virus.
So we can overcome this crisis by changing the way we behave and live. For now, NHK will continue to bring you the latest information about the new coronavirus.
Our guests were Professor Oshitani of the Graduate School of Tohoku University and a member of the Government Expert Panel, and Professor Kaku at Tohoku Medical and Pharmaceutical University. Thank you for joining us.